What's going on, everybody? We're going to talk about the first day ACC Kickoff. David is there in Charlotte. David, what's going on?
Yeah, good day, Chris. Beautiful Charlotte. Got to ease into it with the Atlantic Division teams today, and I missed the commissioner's speech to kick it all off, but I know you watched it and I read all the quotes, so plenty to talk about. And then tomorrow on Thursday we get Mario, so plenty to talk about here.
Yeah, when I texted you, I was like, yeah, there's a lot to unpack with what Jim Phillips had to say, touched on a lot of different things, spoke for about an hour. We will get into that. There's definitely some hot topics I know a lot of people want to talk about, but I'm curious what your day was like today. I know you were able to ask a few questions. Just what were you able to do there in Charlotte today?
Yeah, so I mainly targeted, right? I just wanted to do my Miami angles. So I wanted to speak from an Atlantic Division perspective. I wanted to speak with Scott Satterfield, who was the offensive coordinator under Mario Cristobal back in his FIU days. So I wanted to ask Scott just, what's it like being on his staff from a recruiting standpoint? What type of recruiter is he? He has that inside view on Mario, and also what does Mario demand from his staff in recruiting? And Scott, was very frank. He said, he's relentless, he's demanding. He had, frankly, an interesting quote, which I don't have a problem with, but I think some coaches might bristle at it. He basically said, he said he thinks Mario cares more about recruiting than X's and O's. And he said, look, I don't blame him, because if you have good players, that means you don't necessarily need to have as good of X's and O's. So that doesn't bother me, but I could see where maybe some coaches might get bothered by that. But yeah, he said, look, Mario in Miami is going to be somewhat of a force to be reckoned with, because he's so close to all that talent now, leading a program like Miami. And overall, just had a lot of good things to say about Mario and what he does as a recruiter.
Yeah, and that is interesting. And it's one of those things where you want coaches, you want everybody that we speak to be honest. So it's tough to criticize them for being honest with that. And look, I think it just comes across as, we all know Mario prioritizes recruiting. That's all it really comes down to. So that doesn't mean yeah, go ahead.
To me, college football is all about the players. I think the X's and O's stuff matters, of course, but I think X's and O's matters more at the NFL level, where the differences between the teams are very slim. Whereas in college football, I mean, there's a reason why Alabama is always in contention for national championships. They always land the best players. So while I think that could be seen as a dig, to me, that's what you got to do to win big. So I'm here for it, honestly. Go all in on landing players. And also too, I want to be clear, I don't think Mario neglects X's and O's. So I don't think that's necessarily true. But I can see why Scott said that, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes that reputation gets out, sometimes with him because of his priority in recruiting, but this guy's a football guy through and through. With all of that. So I know you had some more notes on other guys, and anybody that wants to read David's notebook, check that out on InsideTheU.com. David, let's get into Jim Phillips here. The commissioners came out, and I felt like I was very interested to see and hear what he was going to have to say. The ACC's at a very pivotal point with where they're at as a conference, with what the Big Ten and SEC are doing now, and what they're about to do moving forward. And it really starts with this media rights deal that everyone's speaking about. And the ACC just has this interesting deal. For people that don't know, they signed it in 2016, and it's good through 2036. And in comparison, at the last Big Ten one, they signed a 6-year deal. Other conferences were doing that at 10 years. So for the ACC to do this 20-year deal, it definitely is going to be interesting to see how they can get out of it or make adjustments with it. And that was certainly a big topic of conversation of how the ACC can generate revenue for its teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime. So I think TV companies, right, want the longer the deal, the better for the TV companies. Now, the ACC saw that money up front and thought, we'll take it. But in this era, right, where rights deals, it seems like they double, triple in value each time these rights deals come up. It's really putting the ACC behind the eight ball. I don't know if Jim Phillips necessarily came out and addressed things head on, like fans of ACC schools would have liked, or even, our fellow media people that are here kind of thought his address was whatever, quite frankly. I'm curious, like, what did you think of it? Do you think because I think leaders need to lead. And I think he danced around a lot of everyone wants to hear you talk about one thing, and he wants to talk about everything around, except the one thing. So what was your take on it?
In general, I feel like he's in a difficult situation. I felt like obviously he's going to dance around on certain things, but I don't think anyone came out of there. And look, I thought the questions were great today by the reporters, hammered on a lot of different things and followed up on some comments that he made earlier. And I thought people did a really good job on some follow-up stuff with the reporters. One of the questions was, in terms of, he tried to compare how these other schools and how they're, with their exit fee, with them leaving, and how that kind of worked out, how it was different. And one of the reporters actually said, look, to be frank, these other schools were waited until that was over, 2 to 3 years left. So they just kind of waited out. Whereas these schools, if people are going to leave, if member schools are going to leave, they have 14 years left on the deal. So there's a big difference with that. But certainly he put a lot of emphasis on academics and Olympic sports, really happy about what they've been able to do. But the bottom line is, this is a football, college sports is ran by football. And I can't imagine anyone left that press conference feeling like, oh, the ACC is going to be very aggressive. And I don't think that people got that sense in terms of expansion or with this media rights deal coming up, just ways to generate revenue. And just basically, just to sum it up, ACC, I had an article on our website, but they're getting about 35 million, 35, 40 per school. Whereas these new deals, these other two big conferences, they're looking at $80, $100 million. And that's kind of the difference. The gap has already been there. And it certainly looks like it's going to stretch unless the ACC does something drastic moving forward. And I don't think I got that sense from Phillips today.
His most problematic quote, and I think you led with this quote in your article, Chris, was something to the effect of, you look at the ACC and the metrics, and we are as good as any other conference in the country except revenue. And it's just like I can tell you from a Miami perspective, all they care about now moving forward with whatever conference they're in is the revenue. They want to be a self-sustaining athletic department. And, and also you're at a competitive disadvantage, of course, when other conferences are doubling you up in this TV revenue money. So, for him to act like he's killing it in every area except TV revenue, well, that's the number one thing, honestly, that matters most. So I agree. He's in a very tough spot, but some of this, Chris, is to his doing on his own. Like, he killed the college football playoff, and now, whatever the next iteration of the college football playoff looks like, I mean, is the ACC going to have an automatic bid when you have two super conferences that are going to get a ton of at-large bids probably? So he's been extreme and steadfast in what he believes. And I get it. Like, he's in a very tough spot. But also at the same time, I don't know if his leadership is necessarily showing publicly in terms of saying the right things. How much does that matter? I don't know. But today wasn't exactly confidence inspiring.
Yeah, the term I was kind of losing it earlier. Grant of rights. That's the term that's being tossed around. I couldn't find it off the top of my tongue here, but that's what's being discussed in terms of the exit fee. Andrea Adelson has reported 120 million to leave the conference. So that's going to be interesting. Correct. And what's interesting too is the expansion. And again, if we just sit back and look at where the ACC is on the landscape, even before all this, sitting essentially behind the SEC and Big Ten in general. But when you touch on the quote that Jim Phillips had to say, he was speaking a lot. He ran through this whole long thing about the ACC had this many national championships or played for or in the semifinals. And we know he's talking about different sports that don't generate the money. And it's great. And it's hard to brush that stuff aside. It's just, that seems to be what the focus is, as opposed to this aggressive stuff. But ACC, with where it is, it's going to be very interesting, because is the Big Ten and SEC done with expansion, or are they just going to keep adding on to what they've already done? And I think that's going to be interesting, because if they just stay put, then that's one thing. But if they're looking to really create this super conference stuff, the ACC, there's a sense that it maybe, it could strive to be the best behind those two. You could still strengthen it and be what you are and be strong there. But if they just keep growing this, I find it very interesting with Miami. You touched on it, how they're going to they want to compete for national titles, and these other schools, some of the schools in the ACC do want to do that as well, and generating revenue and getting this yearly sum that's going to be nearly twice as much as the ACC as it stands right now.
So we know this, Chris, like this new regime, and that's, Julio Frank, that's Dan Radakovich, that's Rudy Fernandez, that's Mario Cristobal, that's Joe Echeverria. The decision makers at Miami now are aggressive. So I don't think they're going to stand pat and hope and pray that the ACC figures things out. I think if you asked Miami, do they wish the ACC could figure things out, they would say yes. But at the same time, they're not going to stand pat and wait for that to happen. So, I have confidence that this regime is going to be aggressive and forward thinking in positioning Miami to be in the best spot they can be from a football perspective. And, I think they'll get it done. The timeline to that, I think, is to be determined. But I think they'll find a way to get it done. And also, too, I think they need some partners within the ACC to kind of get on board with them. Because the best case scenario in terms of not having to pay exit fees and all that, quite frankly, is to just kill the conference with a bunch of schools leaving.
Yeah, and it feels like if there is an exit, whatever school that might be, that seems to be the scenario you're looking at. You can't figure it's one team leaving like Maryland did in 2014 or
right.
for that 2013-14 thing. And ACC that year actually added 3 teams, but Notre Dame, that's the other thing that stood out.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. What did he say about Notre Dame?
Okay, so he has ties to Notre Dame, and I thought that was interesting. I think for the ACC moving forward, they've got to be aggressive somehow with Notre Dame to make them a full member institution. And basically, he took the other approach. He says, we understand the value that they want to be independent, and they know that we want them. And basically said, if Notre Dame wants to join a conference, he did say he feels, the quote is, I feel really good about it being the ACC. Now, we can argue that or whatever, but
I don't believe it, but okay.
That's what he said. And I feel like,
right.
I hope that doesn't mean he's sitting back and just waiting, because I think every conference would love to add Notre Dame. This isn't regional anymore in terms of conferences. So if other conferences are going to be more aggressive with Notre Dame, if they're going to be, I feel like AC has to be careful in that they just think that Notre Dame is going to come, if that decision is made. But, Notre Dame is locked in at some level, with their being a partial member and being full-fledged on these other sports. So it's a kicker for me, because I think the ACC, if they get Notre Dame as a full member, I think they can grow. I think you can add a few more teams, and there's some very interesting teams that I've thought about that could make sense for the ACC. What are you thinking about Notre Dame and maybe Phillips's comments there?
Absolutely. That would be the ACC's ticket to being the third conference. If they do that, if Notre Dame decides to come to the ACC, if Miami becomes the Miami we think it can be, if Florida State gets its act together, that's a nice little top four for your conference when you include Clemson within that from a football perspective, right? The thing I would say is, okay, then what is, like, if Notre Dame, number one, does Notre Dame want to join a conference? Because there's reports out there already this week that they feel like they can command 75 million a year to just stick with their NBC deal. So there's that. Also, too, would they really, like, if they wanted to join a conference, what's stopping them now? I think if they decided to, if they were like, hey, we're going to join the ACC, I think it's pretty certain that ESPN would rip up their current contract they have with the ACC, come with a new deal that would be much better for the conference as a whole. I think that would happen. So, I from what I hear, I don't know if Jim Phillips and athletic director at Notre Dame, Jack Swarbrick, are exactly on the greatest of terms. Jack Swarbrick had a big role in putting together the college football playoff expansion idea that Jim Phillips ultimately killed. So, I respect that Jim Phillips said that, but I would think if Notre Dame joined a conference, I think the smart bet would be that conference would be the Big Ten.
David, there's a lot of things we can get into. There's day two coming up. I want to keep this one a little tight. If there's anything you want to add, go ahead. But if not, we'll do this again tomorrow. Miami's going to talk. Mario Cristobal, Tyler Van Dyke, Will Mallory, and also Jafari Harvey are there. So I know you're going to be busy with that. Definitely everybody's got to stay tuned to the channel and the site. But anything you want to add on this? I know we could talk a long time about this, and there's going to be still more coming out of there. I'm very curious to get your reaction tomorrow, kind of as things kind of settle with what Jim had to say today.
Yeah. So again, like you said, Miami's day is the Coastal Day, which is Thursday. So we'll talk more Miami in tomorrow's recap. Just my big picture takeaway today with the Atlantic was there's some good quarterbacks on that side of the division. Talk about Wake Forest, Sam Hartman, NC State's Devin Leary, Louisville's Malik Cunningham, Boston College's Phil Jerkovich, who I think is a little underrated, quite frankly. And then Clemson had DJ Oyunglele out there representing them. And I will say it is noticeable. And again, how much does this matter at quarterback? I don't know. But he's much more trim than he was last year. So I think maybe the takeaway with that is he's process oriented. He felt like maybe last year he played a little too heavy, and he's put in the work to improve in those ways. Dabo Swinney gave a full vote of confidence to DJ as his starting quarterback. I know that's somewhat of a question mark for Clemson this year. So overall, the Atlantic side's tougher, quite frankly, than the coastal side. So we'll get to see the coastal guys up close and personal, and stay locked onto the website too, because I'll be throwing some updates there as things roll in throughout the day.
Yeah, it is interesting. And in Wake Forest, NC State, two teams people really like. Miami does not play them in the regular season this year. So it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, they've got games against these other teams. So, all right, David, we'll talk again. Looking forward to the next time. A lot more to talk about. And if we miss anything, definitely drop in the comments below and let us know what you guys think. All right, David, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.